I grew up on the East Coast between New Jersey and New Hampshire, depending on the time of year and what school I was going to. I wanted to be a theater guy. I wanted to be an actor. My mother told me years later that I sang before I spoke. She said, you actually would sing along with music and in tune, right? I always loved singing. I mean, singing for me, singing harmonies has always been, there's something, I still do it on the records that I produce. I mean, if there's a song that I think my backgrounds will be right on, I'll spend a day laying down background parts and figuring something out that just pumps the end. I just love it. After boarding school, where I did start writing, I had a wonderful English teacher where we had a creative writing class. So I started doing a lot of different kinds of writing, and I realized that I really liked writing. So I got to college and I went to Brandeis University. There were two bands at Brandeis. There was one, which by the way, John Landau was in, Bruce Springsteen's manager. We were in the same class at Brandeis. John was in the cover band, right? That did Stones and Paul Revere and the Raiders songs, right? And we were in the all original Acid Head band, you know, that I was the lead singer in. And I keep getting fired from that band, by the way, for whatever, being a dick probably. And the next year, we all wrote a musical together, and I had to write some songs for it. With my friend Craig Saffin, who lives here, was a year behind us, who's scored many films and TV shows and everything. It kind of like pushed some buttons in me. And then after I graduated, the next year was kind of difficult for me. I was ungrounded. Came out here, tried to make it in the summer, couldn't, went back east, tail between my legs, feeling like I'd been a major failure. A friend of mine gave me a baby grand piano, and I started playing every day. And then I started writing. You know, it wasn't easy for me. It took me a long time and a number of collaborators before I really felt comfortable writing things on my own. I was best friends with a woman named Maria Muldaur. We had become very close friends, and we sang a lot together. We both auditioned for Hair, got to the finals, and choked. And she'd made a record for Warner Brothers with her husband Jeff called Pottery Pie. And Mo Austin had called her and said, I want you to make a solo record for Warner Brothers. So she called me and said, well, who should produce it? I don't know who should produce it. Somehow or other, through Loudon Wainwright, I don't remember how this happened, I met Kate McGarrigle. Kate and Maria and I had dinner, and Kate came back to my house and played piano and sang for me until 4 a.m. And I was like, that. And I knew, I said, okay, I kind of have an idea. What we're going to do is we're going to do Maria's record, you know, and then I'm going to get Kate a deal on Warner Brothers. That's where it sort of really started to flow together for me. 2 years before I moved here, 3 years, I was working with a bunch of people in Boston. I had gone to Brandeis University, majored in theater, and I worked with an artist who you may or may not know, Andy Pratt, who wrote a wonderful song called Avenging Annie, among other things. And Andy had a deal in Columbia. It was a great band. I mean, it was Rick Schlosser on drums, Abe Laboriel on bass. I was sort of like the guy who played keyboards and guitar and sang backup. And we went down and played Brown University, and who should open for us? Matthew and Peter. My career started with Lenny Waronker as my mentor, basically. And he gave me my first producing jobs for Warner Brothers. And Ron Goldstein, who was a product manager there, was a friend of Matthew's. I don't remember how, but he brought him over, and there was like this little guy with at that time, a mustache and a Jufro out to here. And he comes to my office, and I hear this stuff that he's written, and I was a very, very opinionated pain in the ass, shall we say. And I said, Matthew, these are Have a Nice Day songs, right? They were all so up, and where's the tortured soul? He told everybody what an asshole I was. Probably rightfully so. My boss, Chuck Plotkin, Charlie had worked with John Landau, been asked by Landau to work on a Bruce Springsteen record. And Charlie was still head of A&R at Elektra. And he had to make a decision between running A&R at Elektra and working with Bruce. And he decided to work with Bruce. He left, and so I got fired, of course, because, you know, unless you've had some humongous amount of success on your own as a young person in that position, you know, when, as they say, your rabbi leaves, you end up on the sidewalk, basically, most of the time. I think Matthew and I had a number of friends in common. I suggested that we write together. I did think that Matthew was genuinely talented, but I did think it needed some edge, and I do think I provided some of that or at least open the gates for some anger, to allow itself into the work, and frustration and a number of other, Matthew is let's get this straight, a brilliantly talented musician, songwriter, and producer. We started writing, we wrote a whole bunch of songs. He had a deal with Arista at this point. Clive had signed him. We would write, or he was writing on his own as well, and he would submit these things to Clive, and Clive, Matthew, I don't hear a hit. And then he came to me one day with Stride. He certainly had a verse in the chorus. It was like, I went, whoa, and we sat down instantly, and I cranked out the bridge. It was like so obvious to me what the bridge was, where it had to go, what it had to do, and we actually finished it, sent it to Clive. Clive didn't like it. Matthew talked to Al and said, get me off Arista. I don't want to be on that label. This was a time where independent promoters were beginning to push their way back into the music business. It had sort of gone away for a while, and they were and you couldn't get anything on the radio without these guys. You had to pay them, the record companies had to pay them a buttload of money to get anything played. He had got his own imprint with Columbia or Sony, whatever it was at that time, called Private Eye, and they put it out, and it was deemed a turntable hit. So a turntable hit is one that gets played a lot but doesn't sell a lot of singles. In fact, it sold about 800,000 singles. I only wrote one song with him for his second album, and that didn't have any hits on it, or they didn't get one on the radio, who knows what. The luck wasn't there. You know how that is. You need a lot of luck as well as everything else. Don't let them tell you that if you just work hard enough, yeah, you got to work your ass off, but
you need some luck.
You need some luck. If there's anything else you can do with your life, do it. And I've said that, by the way, I've been saying that to artists for my whole life. I think my father pretty much said the same thing, because they were artists and they would try to he'd joke every once in a while, you should marry a doctor if you want to be an artist, It's tough. It ain't what it was, and you got to be part of a team, and you better be prepared to write that song with 4 other people and crank them out. It's kind of factory line time in terms of top 40 radio for the most part. And then there's an Ed Sheeran every once in a while, who's lucky enough to get discovered and whose craft was fallen in love with by somebody like Taylor Swift who'd already made it. Keep doing it if you have to do it. It gives you hope that someone's going to hear the stuff, beyond Break My Stride, beyond Wild Women Do, beyond the other songs, that Celine cut and whomever, because you write other things that are great, okay, that you love, and are great, and you really believe could be a hit for somebody, and you were so disappointed that nobody ever really heard it. You never know what's over there. You don't know.